If you want to pump your body and expand your mind, there's only one place to go. Mind Pump. Mind Pump with your hosts, Sal DiStefano, Adam Schaefer, and Justin Andrews.
LCK in the house. This is actually someone that was I was connected to through my uncle. My uncle, who's a big fan of the show, listens to every episode. And every once in a while, he'll send me over somebody. Sometimes they're not very good, but every once in a while, he sends me over somebody who I'm like, hey, that's a really good find right there. And he had been following Laurie for a while, and she's connected to Jolene Brighton. She's connected to Becky Campbell. She's Steffi Cohen. Yeah, she's connected to a lot of people.
She's got a good message. She's a fit, strong, smart young lady who is promoting the right message. And so we looked at her page and we were impressed.
Yeah, she's doing really good things.
Yeah. So we had her on the show to talk all about her approach, her experience, what got her to do what she did. We think you're really going to enjoy this episode. We really liked her. We hit it off. So this looks like it's going to be a long-term friendship. I know she's going to be starting her own podcast at some point. So we hope to help her and support her in that as well.
Hormones, CrossFit.
Yeah, I mean, she's got that, if you like our message, that balanced approach, then you'll definitely like her. And I highly recommend you follow her on Instagram. She's got one of the better, more educational and entertaining Instagram pages. Her company's called Paragon Training Methods. That page is at Paragon Training Methods on Instagram. Her website is LaurieChristineKing.com. She has a great blog. She's a great writer. She has good information. Her own personal Instagram page is at Laurie Christine King. Laurie is spelled Laurie, by the way, excuse me. So it's Laurie Christine King. And that's pretty much it. And really enjoyed talking to her, and I think you're going to enjoy this episode. Before it gets started, though, I want to let everybody know we have a new promotion in August. This is the first time these programs have ever been on sale. MAPS Prime and MAPS Prime Pro, so both Prime programs, 50% off. And I can tell you this much right now, we are probably not going to bring this promotion back anytime soon.
For the rest of your life.
These are two of the most valuable programs, in our opinion, that we offer. MAPS Prime teaches you how to set your body up before your workouts, how to prime your body before your workouts to make your workouts far more effective. So to be able to connect better to the muscles you're trying to target and be able to do the exercises more efficiently and effectively. MAPS Prime Pro, correctional in nature. So correctional exercise. You want to be able to let your shoulder move better. You want to be able to have better function in your spine or your hips or your ankles, your feet, your knees, your wrists. MAPS Prime Pro is the program for you. If you're a personal trainer and you don't own these programs,
how dare you?
Something's wrong with you. These are extremely valuable programs that you can use and apply on your clients. It'll bring you tremendous value. It'll get you more re-signs, and you'll get better results with your clients. So both of these programs, for the first time ever, are 50% off. In order to get them, you got to go to mapsfitnessproducts.com and use the code PRIME50. That's PRIME50, no space, for the discount. And that's it. Without any further ado, here we are talking to the lovely Laurie King.
So my sister's 1 year younger than me, right? So she's 37. She's no kid. She had no desire to have any kids. So we both kind of went through that same thing, her and I being close in age and seeing all that. I mean, exactly. It's like my whole life, I didn't want to recreate anything close to what my parents had. And for us, a lot of what I saw, the turmoil was financial. It seemed that, as soon as a birthday came around and we didn't have money or we couldn't pay the PG&E bill or whatever bullshit, caused all kinds of crazy drama, which led to like verbal and physical abuse in the house. And it was just like, so of course that's forever ingrained to me that like, I have to be in this place where money's not an issue for me. I don't have to think about it. I don't want to stress about it. Like, let me just work on my partner and my kid and things like that. So that's why I waited so long. I waited because I wanted to be in a place where I knew that I had the flexibility to leave work when I wanted to and go see my son when I need to. I don't have to worry about money, things like that. So, and I didn't know if that was going to happen before I turned fucking 50 or not. So,
it's a massive responsibility. The funny thing is, people who are afraid, who then later on do have kids, tend to be very good at it because they considered all the challenges and the responsibilities.
Oh, I think when people would ask me, it was funny. It used to actually bother me that people would think that I had like commitment issues.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that used to be like a pet peeve of mine. Like, oh, you just have commitment issues. It's like, no, it's just that I've really fucking thought through all this shit, and I'm gonna be responsible. I'm not gonna fuck another human's life up and put them through anything that I went through. And it's not a commitment issue at all. It's that I have things in my head that where I want to be in life before I take on the responsibility of bringing another life into this world. So fuck
but
you.
like parenthood's scary though. So like I actually have a post generated for this week because like with a lot of my clients, we're kind of getting away. It's like I always talk about anyway, like nutrition is like 5 to 10%, macros and nutrition. It's really a lot of just like getting deep down into like why people behave a certain way, why they have certain feelings about, their body or, certain relationships towards food and, exercise and stuff like that. And it's like, parenting is so scary because like children are little sponges, right? So it's like having people journal through things like, well, cool, like what does your parents' relationship with food look like? What food tendencies do they have? What does their relationship with exercise look like? Are they super active or, kind of again, like how do your parents, talk about their bodies? Like is your mom standing in the mirror every day just ripping herself to shreds and, commenting about, I think for my mom, like I was kind of talking about this recently, but it's like my mom's been on a diet her whole fucking life. And so, she deflected a lot of her personal issues onto me. And so it's like I turned 30 in September, but it's like there's so many things I've had to work through because it's even like, so I competed at regionals on a team in CrossFit in 2016, and I remember that like we went through like a big scuffle like mid 2015 because it was like I was the heaviest I'd ever been because I'm 5'3". Like you have to, if you want to be strong and roll with people that are big, like I had to put on size. And it was like I wasn't the most aesthetic I'd ever looked, but it was like I was also, submitting scores where I was, very, very competitive at the weight. But it's like I remember my mom making comments where it was like, oh, you're too big, you're too manly, like what happened to my little girl? And it's like, whoa, like talk about shit you can't say to somebody, right? And so it's like, and I took that my whole life where it was like she was always just kind of nitpicking the way I looked or like I was never, skinny enough. And disclaimer, when I started CrossFit at 5'3", I weighed 92 pounds. Wow. Like I was fucking tiny. I was marathon training at the time. But same thing, it was like there were so many things that came from that because it was like, oh, well, I'm just never tiny enough. So, whether it's for, a significant other, like that's where it led over to, right? It's like, well, my mom never thinks I have, a good enough body. So anybody out there that I'm trying to date or, spectate on probably doesn't think I have a good enough body for them either, right? So like, why not exercise more? Why not, eat less food, and it ends up the spiral. But same thing, it's like, that's not uncommon. I talked to a client recently, and so like she was talking about literally when she was a kid, her mom's been overweight her whole life. So when she was a kid growing up, before dinner, her mom would say, hey, lift up your shirt, so she could look at their stomach and see, how, I'll put air quotes around how skinny or not they were.
Wow.
But so like her spiral is like, she, like present day, she's such a rock star, has such great food quality, all this good stuff. But she still has the mental struggle because it's like, for her, like just being able to travel and I don't want to say eat off plan, but just like not have to worry about it, right? Like she could just eat food, not stress, intuitive eating, aka eating, just putting food in your mouth, right? But like being able to do that for her was a big step. And so she was doing super well, had 3 or 4 trips where she was just crushing it and, doing a really good job with her food. And then she had one trip in particular where like she was just human. Like she enjoyed herself. She had one too many slices of pizza. She wasn't super comfortable, afterwards kind of with what happened with the week. And so we talked about that. And that was the thing she talked about going through was like, my mom's been overweight my whole life. And when I do things that align with how she acts, right? Eating more food, all that stuff. Like she was in a mental spiral because it was like, I don't want to be like my mom. Like I've spent my entire life trying not to be here. Right. And yet here I just went on a trip. I fucking blew it out on pizza and alcohol and, all the foods. But again, it's like telling somebody, hey, you're okay. Like, it's okay to be human. Like, not everybody eats a certain way,
Right.
it's like, at the end of the day, like, the time on earth is really short. Like, fucking enjoy yourself.
Well, it's crazy because I remember the first time that I read, like, when we were at the ages of like 5 to 7 years old is when we solidify so many of these patterns and habits, and that the brain is just like this crazy sponge at that age. And I think back to what you were doing at 5, 6, 7 years old, and I see it now played out because there's a big gap between my youngest siblings and me and my sister. So me and my sister are a good 13 years above. And it's funny to see the two older ones. So with me and my sister is 1 year apart. We saw all the dysfunction and we were already teenagers. So we are kind of like wise enough to go like, I don't want it to be anything like this. And so we are completely opposite. Our whole life mission is to do everything opposite of what we saw our parents do because we don't want to fall down the same pattern. Then I see the two younger ones who don't recall any bad times at all because they were so little. They don't remember the fighting. They don't remember the craziness. Mom and dad were divorced by the time they were young preteens. So they don't, and then they've kind of fallen in the exact same pattern. So to be the oldest and kind of look back and see, it's like, holy shit. Yep. And they have no clue. They have no clue that they are like, I'm watching my younger siblings live out a lot of the exact same behaviors I watched my parents go through. And it's like, well, that's so crazy how when you're that young, and that's what's, I guess it makes me almost angry when I see it with parents that are just so irresponsible because you think they're a child, like, and they don't understand. It's like, it doesn't even matter if they understand or not. That becomes their inner voices.
Yep.
And that stuff gets cemented in them forever. And they'll spend, if they're lucky, they'll spend the rest of their life unpacking that and fixing it, if they're lucky. But what happens to most people is they fall right back in the fucking cycle.
I think here's the thing, though. So, like, it's fun having a family of all ages because it's like, I was like a mistake baby for sure. So, like, my dad is 71, my mom is 63, and like I said, my oldest brother is 41. And so it's interesting because if you kind of look present day at the people that are kind of in the 40 to 50 sector, it falls under the category of like, nothing's wrong, everything's perfect, right? So it's like, if you were to suggest, hey, like, it seems like you have some poor relationships, with food, with exercise, with your personal, body and appearance and image, just with yourself, maybe traumatic things that you went through, whether it was, again, a suicide in the family or family dysfunction, a poor relationship, maybe you should seek a therapist or a professional counseling. And every single one of those people from that age gap is going to clam up and be like, oh, no, like, I'm fine. Like, there's no problems. I don't need to see somebody. But that's like, you kind of peel it back to people again, like, I'm about to be 30. And it, like, I want to say like therapy's trendy, but like, you talk to everybody, it's like, yeah, see my therapist today. Like, this is what we talked about. Like, fuck yeah. And I think that really, honestly, the people that are like 20 to 25 right now, like, they're going to be the people that, I want to say they figured it out. But it's like, again, like, it's just so much more common and accepted to like, hey, like that's the reason why
talking about your feelings is okay now. Yeah, it wasn't if people that are 40 and 50 like talking about your feelings was not.
Well,
okay.
I think there's a balance, because there's studies that now, several studies now have shown things like trigger warnings that want to actually make things a lot worse. So there's also the over-therapizing of like, and the coddling that can happen, which you see with the younger generations where maybe it is okay to say you're fine. And they're like, no, I want to talk about this, and it's a bigger problem, and it makes it a bigger problem. So I think that you might be right. It might be the younger generation. What do they call that generation? Not millennials.
Generation Z.
Is it Z? Mm-hmm. They're the ones that are a little bit more cynical and a little bit more kind of in the middle, if you will. So what drove you into fitness? Was it the body image stuff? Was that what really motivated you to get into working out?
So I was a competitive gymnast my whole life. Literally, I started at 5 years old, and it was like kind of like freak accident. Found out like, oh, this is what you're good at. And like, even present day, like, I tell people I can't play sports with balls. Like, it's not. It's just not my jam. I tried really hard to make it a thing, but I'm really good with body weight stuff. And even it's like a barbell and some dumbbells is about the only thing I've ever fluidly been able to move my whole life.
Sal can relate to this.
Just not an athlete, unfortunately. But yeah, so I got basically when I stopped competing in gymnastics, it was like I was kind of searching for that replacement thing, right? And so Towards the tail end of high school is when I got diagnosed with hypothyroidism, which is basically the gland in your neck that controls things like metabolism, your sleep, your mood, just about everything in the body. But so long story short, I went through a phase where I was really, really struggling with body composition, body weight, and just not feeling well. I was actually, the reason why I went to see a doctor was, again, I was 17 or 18 years old, but it was like I was sleeping upwards of like 14, 15, 16 hours a day. And, my parents were like, this seems weird. You keep missing school. Like maybe you should check it out. And sure enough, got some blood work done, ended up getting prescribed, thyroid medication and, kind of cruising on. But so the thing was, I wasn't feeling much better, even though I started taking medication. So it kind of spun this idea of like, okay, I want to help someone in my position never be in my position. So maybe, I should go to school for this, kind of learn, selfishly learn a little bit more for myself and my personal needs. But then again, be able to give it back to people too. And so I ended up going to school, got my degree in nutrition dietetics, and then I also found CrossFit in college. And so it was like CrossFit was that thing where it was like, oh, this is competitive, it's fun, but it's also new. Like I had never in my life touched barbells. I'd never touched dumbbells, heavy weights. And so it's amazing because CrossFit and lifting and all that stuff, kind of shifted my perspective of rather than just being obsessed about, what my body looked like, shifting it to, oh my gosh, like what my body can do for me. And, it's just this amazing thing. And
did you go into CrossFit with a good relationship with exercise at this point, or were you going in with not so good of a relationship?
Absolutely not. So like I said, I was 92 pounds. I had signed up I lived in Illinois my whole life. I'm from a small college town. So I had run the Chicago Marathon in 2012, and that was like while I was training for that is when I found CrossFit. So I think it was, we'll say 3 or 4 months before. My sister-in-law lived in Seattle. I was visiting, and then they were like, oh, hey, try this thing, you'll love it. And sure enough, like I was that freak person that, again, it was like, oh, hey, here's a muscle up. Oh, cool, you did a muscle up. Or, oh, hey, this is a kipping pull up. And, I'd be over there, doing them. So, like, I've always been very good spatially and with gravity where it's like, if you show me how to do something, like, I can do it. I can do it. So yeah.
So now, was it body obsession, then moved to performance? And did it become performance obsession? Now, I've worked with clients, and one of my strategies with people who have body obsession issues is to move them to performance, but then you have to move out of that as well because that can become its own issue. Did you fall into that same pattern?
For sure. So the way I've always kind of referred to it too is like I have a very addictive personality, and not in the form of like drugs and that sort of thing, but it's like with coaching, for example, it's like, well, somebody's coming to you in a very poor place. Nobody hires a nutrition coach when you feel good. So that whole idea of like, oh, well, I can help. I can make you feel better. That's an addictive cycle. Same thing, I think, with exercise. It's like, honestly, part of it came from lack of hobbies because the only life I'd ever known was get up, go to school, do gymnastics, for hours and hours on end. So I think it was just a natural replacement. It was replacement therapy. It was like, well, I don't have gymnastics anymore. Obviously when training for a marathon, same thing, you're running, it's like you would go out and be running for 2.5 hours or whatever it is. And so same thing, CrossFit was that natural, replacement where it's like, oh, well, like an hour of CrossFit's, that's great. But more is better. Like, I want to get stronger. I want to hit PRs. And so same thing. It's suddenly like you spiral and you're like 2-3 hours in the gym later. And I don't think that's different for many people. It's like CrossFit attracts the type A, high-performing, competitive people. And that's why, I don't want to say it's a very dysfunctional community because CrossFit's done so many great things. But again, it's like the more is better. You need to leave yourself on the floor. You have to destroy yourself. If you don't walk out, rolling around on the floor in pain. And so it took me a really long time to get out of that mindset because, again, like it's so deeply ingrained. And same thing, when you realize, oh, I'm halfway good at something. And disclaimer, again, I was on a team. So it's not like I was like, oh, hey, I made it to regionals as an individual. But again, it's like I kind of found something that I was like, oh, I'm pretty good at this thing. So again, more is better.
The environment, the CrossFit environment is like, God, it's like gasoline on the fire for some people. Like if you're that type A obsessive type of person, that environment it's like a bar for alcoholics. Like,
I was gonna say
like
the same.
it doesn't mean you're going to be an alcoholic, but if you are, this is like not necessarily the best environment. Was there a point where you were like, oh, I'm overdoing everything, like this needs to calm down?
Or did your body end up telling you what ended up happening?
My body ended up telling me. So immediately after we competed at regionals, I remember like it took me 6 months to basically like pick my body back up off the floor, because it's like I knew like I just felt like total dog shit. It's like I would go to the gym and just, you're like, have you ever been working out and you're like, I need to go. I shouldn't be here. Like that scenario. But same thing, like being in the middle of a workout, or, maybe you're lifting and you're like, man, I could like black out a little, or, So got blood work done, and, it was like cortisol levels were super fucked. And I remember at the time specifically, it's like, it would, I was traveling a lot for work. And so it's like, we would be out at team dinners at, 8 or 9 p.m. And it's like, my cortisol curve was super opposite, because it'd be like 9 p.m. and then you start be like, woo! Like everything, it's like, wow, Laurie, you're getting really loud. But same thing, it would just be like tired but wired. I'd go back to a hotel room and after dinner and just be like, shit, man, like I know I need to go to bed. I know I have an early flight, but like I just can't wind down. And so it was like cortisol levels sucked. I've struggled again with thyroid issues my whole life. So obviously after competing, like they were absolute dog shit.
Did you have to adjust your thyroid medication through this process?
Yeah.
Is it more or less? Did you have to end up taking more of it?
So I'll kind of sidestep your question for a second, and I'll say that I took thyroid meds from the time I was in, again, late high school up until the time I was 28, and I never once saw optimal thyroid values. And later I learned, because again, I worked for a really big company that was full of very intelligent people, and so as I was kind of struggling with thyroid stuff with competitive exercise, it was like I had a coworker that was like, hey man, just food for thought. Like I know you're always struggling with your thyroid meds. I know you're always struggling to feel well. And no doubt, like you need to fucking eat more food, stop training as much, and, have a better relationship with the frequency of when you exercise, and like, take it down a notch, give your body a break. But have you considered the fact that you've been taking hormonal birth control since you were a teenager, and here you are at, 28 years old, still struggling to find good values? Like, understand that, hormonal birth control can impact thyroid levels. And so same thing, it was like through my early 20s, through my late 20s, it was constantly, it was like every 3 months I would go get my levels tested. And, it was like, even as I hedged closer to 27, 28, 29, it was like, I'm doing everything, all air quotes, everything, right?
Yeah.
It was like, hey, like, I'm eating, ample calories, I'm eating ample fats, I'm eating really high quality food. It's like I, at a point, I would say the past 2 years, I've really just been cranking on just like getting my shit together. But it was like, I'm not training hard anymore. I'm prioritizing 8 to 10 hours of sleep. I'm eating cruciferous vegetables. I'm worrying about gut health, liver health, all this bullshit. And I still wasn't seeing optimal thyroid values. And then when I finally did transition off of hormonal birth control 3 months later, first time in my fucking life.
Wow. So then you went off the birth control. Mm-hmm. Now your thyroid is normalized.
Yep. And so this past, so that happened when I was 28. Like I said, I'm almost 30. But this past 2 years is, kind of when the wheels started turning, where it was like, shit, man, this isn't an uncommon narrative that's like I see women all the time as clients where it's like, hey, what medications do you take? Hormonal birth control, thyroid meds, spirulactone, or some similar, some sort of medication for acne. I'm also taking antidepressants or some sort of anti-anxiety meds. It's like the full plethora. And then it's like, when you really look at that, it's like, the interesting thing is that we know hormonal birth control can impact gut health, can impact nutrient deficiencies, it can impact, mood and all of these things. And so it's like, how many clients I've had where it was like, at some point they got off hormonal birth control, and then, we'll say like it's a long process, right? Like one simply does not work with their doctor, and the doctor says like, hey, get off your anti-anxiety med or whatever. But it's like the number of clients I work with where, maybe over the course of 3 years together, they went from 5 kajillion medications down to, oh, wow, we don't take any.
Yeah.
And again, it's like, we don't live in a fucking bubble. So this doesn't paint the picture of like, yep, hormonal birth control did it. It's the devil. But it's like, it's a big factor that has to be considered.
It reminds
Was that
me
a cold turkey decision? What did that look like getting off birth control?
So here was kind of my thoughts. It's not personally one that I would normally do with clients. And we kind of talked about this off show, but like my personal coaching relationship present day that I really strive for is, hey, it's me. We have, our badass client, and then we have a functional or integrative doctor. And so I'll expand real quickly because I get this question on social media all the time. So I think it's a really great point to hammer. But like a functional doctor looks at the body as a whole rather than sometimes we get doctors where it's like, oh, you've got gut problems, go see a gastroenterologist. Oh, you've got, it's like functional doctors look at everything as a whole. And so same thing, they tend to be a little bit more holistic or a little bit more natural in the process as well, where it's like, rather than just reaching for 5 million medications or prescriptions or whatever it is, it's like they're trying to look at the bigger picture of like, hey man, if we have signs of insulin resistance, why don't we eat 10 degrees less like an asshole? Like, why don't we, try changing our food and, stuff like that, rather than, again, being like, oh, here's a prescription for metformin, or, oh, here's a prescription, for this. And so that's kind of the coaching relationship that I tend to strive with. But when I got off hormonal birth control, at the time I had shoulder surgery. And so I had torn my shoulder at regionals during the snatch ladder. And so long story short, it was like had surgery, and then it was like my entire life just kind of went to shit for the second time. So it was like the first time was like when I actually competed at regionals, and then it was like, turn around. I think there was like a year difference between when I actually figured out, oh, hey, like your shoulder pain, this chronic thing you're dealing with isn't just like you need to see a chiro more often. It was like, like there's something wrong. And so I had shoulder surgery about a year and a half ago. And so that was like when everything just went to shit would be a good descriptor there. So it was like, A, I'm in a shoulder sling.
I got to do something now.
I'm in a shoulder sling that was like, B, I think 2 months later, like I just tipped super estrogen dominant. So it was like I was carrying tons of weight in my midsection, rapidly gaining weight, which again, part of that comes with you can't train as hard if you're bouncing back from surgery and stuff like that. But just dealing with a lot of mood stuff, just a lot of symptoms overall. And so it was like, I just had this weird thing where it was like, hey man, like let's just freaking handle our shit. And so it was like, had shoulder surgery, also transitioned off of hormonal birth control, and then trying to just, bounce back from all of that. And so it was like, everything that I was doing, it was kind of like, hey, I'm just going to throw every possible dart that exists. And if it sticks, like, I don't care what works.
So you just completely slow down then and isolate yourself?
Yeah. So I actually, at the time I was living in Houston, I was at a gym full of games athletes, and we trained 7 days a week. And again, like back to what we said earlier, where it's like, that's like an alcoholic being at the bar. Like there's no way. It was like, I was an asshole to my body. Like I didn't slow down. I didn't try to, I didn't give my body the time it needed to properly rehab it. And so present day, it's like I'm still dealing with shoulder issues, ironically, from all of that. But it's like I was at a gym, and so I paid $6,000 to break my lease and like get out of there. So I moved to Austin. My brother lives in Austin. Then I had 2 friends that I knew, and like that was it. But it was just like, well, I'm just gonna move to a new city. Like then I can kind of get my shit together. But ironically, going through all of these hormone woes, going through all of bouncing back from competitive exercise, overtraining, and the shoulder stuff, like that was where gym programming was born, because it was like when you're dealing with hormone issues, when you're dealing with cortisol issues, when you're dealing with just all this bullshit, it's like you have to train differently. Like it's not as simple as it's like, oh hey, like I'm just gonna do this thing at the gym. It's like we would test stuff where it was like I couldn't do I'll say cardio loosely, but it's like I couldn't hop on a salt bike. Like if I would hop on a salt bike, same thing, I'd be like, cool, I feel like I'm gonna black out. And so it's like we problem solve through a lot of the things where it's like finding a way that people can still train while in a compromised state, and like how do you help your body bounce back from all of that. So it's kind of this bittersweet thing where it's like I went through a couple years of just deep in the weeds, but so many great things came from it, because it's like now we have this awesome community where it's like, hey man, ultimately at the end of the day, like do you just want to look good, feel good, and fucking have fun in the gym? cool, like we have a program for that, you know? And so I think like I love questions because I'm sure, you know, it seems like you guys deal with this a lot too, where it's like, oh, how do you feel about Orange Theory? Or how do you feel about spin class? Or like you guys did a great episode about like Beachbody stuff. But it's like people want you to defend of black or whites. And it's like, again, like at the end of the day, like I'm so grateful that CrossFit, you know, got me into all this because everything I'm doing present day with, you know, my job, my business, you know, our two companies, like it all started because of CrossFit. That's like, I learned so many things the hard way. And I think there's so many people still out there, you know, learning things the hard way because it's like so many people ultimately work out because they just want to look good and feel good. And yet, you know, they're smashing their face with spin classes, you know, 6 times a week. And then maybe later they go to hot yoga afterwards. And then that night they go to Orange Theory, they go to CrossFit. It's like, fuck, man.
Do you feel like CrossFit, like people in the community are drawn to you and what you're doing now? And are you helping them
Or you
kinda
rubbing
see the
people, or
light?
rubbing people the wrong way?
So like I'm always like I'm not everyone's cup of tea and I'm okay with that because I think like authenticity guaranteed is something that I really strive for. So it's like I don't ever try purposely to be a dick, but I think at some point, you know, it's like I'm a very sarcastic person. And so if people don't quite wrap their minds around that, it's like you might get offended. But it's like I do try to have fun with it. You know, it's like if you're going to talk about things like hormones, or again, like we talked about off air, like if you're going to talk about low testosterone, like you better believe there's going to be dick jokes that come or stuff like that. But it's like trying to, I would say equal parts is like, how do you talk about all this in a way that's well received and not uncomfortable? Because again, you know, it's like if you talk to people, it's like, well, people don't want to talk about their issues. People, you know, it's like, no, like let's talk about your issues. But I think, yeah, you know, especially with our community, like that's the biggest feedback that we get from people is like, holy shit, man, like I used to have really poor, you know, like relationships with myself. I used to look in the mirror and just, you know, tear myself apart. And I used to train, you know, too many days a week, or I used to be under eating. Like we effectively are teaching people how to eat well and fuel enough for their body, you know, how to just understand what your goals are, right? Like if you're fucking, you know, if you're competing, like you have to worry about performance. You shouldn't be worrying about your abs or your aesthetics, you know? So like helping people just own their shit. But also again, like I think one thing that I've done really well in the coaching space is it's like a few years ago, I didn't used to immediately promote people like, hey, go see a therapist to, you know, to work through this, or hey, you know, go get testing, like go get these things checked out. That's like literally on the daily, we have people posting in our Facebook community group where it's like, yo, like I'm so, you know, like thank you for repeatedly reminding us to just handle our own stuff, because I finally went to the doctor and it turns out, man, you know, I've been struggling for years, and oh, well, like like my hormone levels are in the floor, you know, I'm struggling with thyroid issues, my cortisol levels suck, you know, so all this stuff. So I think across the board, like I'm just really proud of kind of what we've done, because again, it's like I'm just trying to help people not go through what I went through.
So how often are you having to turn people away from CrossFit?
Ooh. I wouldn't say turning people from CrossFit, but I would just say helping people get really clear on their goals. And so again, just as an example, it's like if your end all be all goal is aesthetics, well, like nobody's doing CrossFit and then showing up at Mr. Olympia, right? So it's like helping people understand like, okay, like I hear you that you really love CrossFit, but if you're communicating to me like you just really want to look good, cool. Well, like kind of, let's get you lifting more. Let's get you, you know, bodybuilding more. And again, if they want to CrossFit, it's fine. But like helping them understand, well, okay, you know, those 2 or 3 days that you're CrossFitting might not be as conducive to your goals as if you were just bodybuilding 5 days a week. And that's fine. Because again, the biggest thing is just like, there's no right or wrong way to do this. It's like, A, do you enjoy what you're doing? Because if you don't, like you're not going to do it regardless. But B, you know, just the idea of education, even you can only lead a horse to water, right. But getting them to understand, you know, what is conducive to their goals, what aligns with their goals. And then, you know, it's up to them to decide, you know, what the rest of that shakes out.
Well, wouldn't you say that? That's in my experience, I feel like most people that are attending a CrossFit box are there just like the same people that show up to a 24-hour fitness or a normal gym. They want to lose body fat. They want to be healthier. They want to look better. And in reality, it's probably not the best approach for 90% of them.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Because again, it's just very hard to moderate between like how, you know, it's like if your best friend's in the room, you're going to try to compete with them. You're going to go faster than you should. Whereas like if you're, you know, say you didn't sleep a ton, like well, if you're at the gym, maybe you should take it easy. But in a CrossFit class, it's just harder to dial that down. Or if you're at Orange Theory where they say, hey, keep your heart rate between this and this, like it's really hard to like sandbag it and listen to what you should be doing. So I think it's just, again, it's like you can only lead a horse to water, but like the CrossFit thing is hard because, the biggest rebuttal is like, oh, but the community. And it's like, well, dude, like if you have strong relationships outside the gym, like don't get me wrong, it's fucking fun to lift with your friends. But like if the CrossFit gym is your only space that you are social and you have friends, that kind of speaks a bigger issue, right? It's the same thing with like, you should have hobbies. Like, yes, it's great to go to the gym, but what do you do when you're not outside, when you're not in the gym? And it's still okay if those hobbies are like, oh yeah, I love going, stand-up paddleboarding, or I love going hiking. There's still physical things and that's fine, but it's like, people don't have hobbies. All they have is, the gym, but then people don't have friends. Like if you asked me in any other sector of my life, like I actually go to a Gold's Gym in downtown Austin present day and I fucking love it. I don't know anybody there, and right. It's totally fine because again, it's like now I have relationships outside of the gym, and I go spend time with people rather than just spending 4 hours at the gym on on a daily basis. So I think part of it is just like helping people assess that issue as well.
Well, Laurie, two things. First, I do want to make sure I give a disclaimer. Like if you're going to reduce your medication, you always should go through a doctor. It can always be dangerous to just cut medication at. You said you cut birth control off 3 months ago. Are you getting used to now natural cycles since you haven't had them for a long time? And how has that changed how you feel and how you train?
Yeah, so disclaimer, when we were kind of talking about my history, right now at this point in time, I think I've been off hormonal birth control for probably about a year and a half or something like that.
Okay.
But yeah, like the people, we're in such a weird time because it's, yes, be the CEO of your own health. Understand, the food that you're putting in your body, understand the things that you're doing. But like people have to have doctors. I don't understand why there's like people struggle with that idea so much because it's like, oh no, I'd rather go on Instagram and play Instagram doctor. Mm-hmm. Oh, I'd rather go on the Google and play Google doctor. But it's like for every medication, whether it's thyroid stuff, whether it's hormonal birth control, it's like you need to be consulting a doctor for that. And so like the irony is like if you're struggling to find a doctor, like literally go on Google, type in functional doctor, Austin, Texas, and like you can find somebody near you. So even present day, I actually have two doctors. I work with a functional doctor virtually. She's in Florida. Her name's Dr. Becky Campbell. And she actually specializes in thyroid stuff. And then I also work with a doctor named Sean Tassone. And same thing, his big thing is he's done a lot of work with the Assure coils that are basically a form of birth control that go up your fallopian tubes. And so those have been causing a lot of problems with women where it's like, they would migrate to places they shouldn't be, or like
I read about that.
And so he's actually like the doctor that I want to say is well known for that thing. That's like if you're struggling with issues with those, he would be the guy to holler at because he's very good at the removal of those. But same thing, it's like it's not hard to find doctors. You just have to do the research, and you also have to understand like, hey, this might not be covered by insurance because, again, functional doctors do things a little bit differently. You're going to be looking at full hormone panels. Specifically, when I hired Dr. Becky Campbell, it was like, I think in a week's time, I spent $3,500 just like, out the gate. But it was like we pulled a GI map test. And so I basically pooped in a cup. We sent it off to get all of that evaluated. We did a test for SIBO, and then we did Dutch test is basically the most comprehensive panel you can do for hormone stuff. But same thing, it's like all of those, all that extensive testing, it's not covered by insurance. And so it's just like getting people to kind of reframe a little bit where it's like, hey, like if you want standard treatment, you can use insurance, and you might not get doctors that are the greatest, but it's like if you want to feel better than the average person, and you want a better form of care, it's going to be a little expensive.
What are some signs that you have female clients that come to you that are doing too much? Like, what are some signs aside from testing, like going and get hormone tests? Yeah. What are some signs that they can identify in themselves that they're maybe doing too much or not eating enough?
Oh man, the overtraining,
like the common ones, yeah.
Yeah, I would just say like kind of feeling like a zombie when you leave the gym. So like for me, that was the biggest thing I noticed when switching to bodybuilding was that at whatever point in the day I would go to the gym to work out, like that's when my workday ended. So it was like if somebody needed to schedule a client call, if I needed to try to answer emails, like might as well hit it tomorrow. Like it's not happening. So I would just say kind of the concept of like brain fog or fatigue, whatever you want to call that. Chronically feeling tired all the time, disrupted sleep. So it may be common to wake up, 2 to 3 times during the night, or people say, oh yeah, I wake up during the night to pee. Your body has systems that should downregulate that situation. So it's like you should lay down at night, sleep through the night and then wake up in the morning. There shouldn't be anything like that. Again, like inability to gain muscle, inability to hit PRs. You're not seeing progress in the gym, inability to lose weight. Because again, like if your body has to feel safe to get lean in to stay lean. So if you're chronically just exercising your face off, well, guess what? Like it might be really, really difficult to change your body composition or to lose weight or whatever that kind of body composition change you're seeking is. With overtraining, you can see in females it might be lack of a menstrual cycle because again, like the female body, whether or not you want to carry a kid, you exist on planet Earth. Like you're the only human species that can reproduce, right? So it's like if your body doesn't feel safe, well, it's going to cut off the mechanism to say, oh, hey, you can carry a second child. Like if it perceives it's not a safe space, you're not going to have a menstrual cycle. For men, it's like you might see lack of morning wood or some sort of sexual dysfunction. You might see low hormone levels because again, it's like if your body is just running on empty, it would be the equivalent of like if you just drink coffee all day long, right? Like you're just going to burn yourself out. Well, same thing if you're just training. Well, yeah, like your hormone levels are going to go to absolute shit. Same thing, your thyroid, you might see low thyroid levels. So it's like across the board, like your body is just so overstressed that everything starts shutting down because your body's like, well, I can't do anything here, so I'll just start shutting off mechanisms.
Yeah. I'm seeing a lot of people and women in particular who are supplementing with what they'll call bioidentical hormones to kind of try to balance things. What is your thought process on that, on supplementing with these hormones to feel better?
So fun fact, I am 29 years old and I'm actually on hormone replacement therapy. And I talked about this big time on social media recently because it's like I fought it really fucking hard. It was like I was trying so hard to do everything right. Like again, like I'm working with 2 of the best doctors, arguably out there. And it's like at this point in time, it's like I took down training. I'm eating tons of food. Like I'm 5'3". Right now I'm actually eating a surplus to try and gain muscle. That's like usually my maintenance calories are right around 2,500. So it's like I'm eating super good quality food. I'm eating enough calories. I was working on reducing stress, supplementing to reduce any sort of deficiencies, doing all this stuff. And it was like, fuck, man, like at some point, maybe if you treat your body like a trash can enough, which I did, competitive gymnastics my whole life, marathon training, that was probably like a 2-year stint, competitive exercise for so many years. At some point, like it seems like your body's just like, hey man, like game over, So it was like, even when in the state of like, it was like, I looked at both of my doctors and they were like, we're out of stuff to suggest or we're out of stuff to change. So it's been about, I think we're on like 2.5 months. And so I would say probably 3 weeks ago is when I finally noticed a difference. Basically on lab work, I had like estrogen levels of a postmenopausal woman. Same thing, testosterone levels were non-existent. And so I'm taking a sublingual, so it's a little flavored capsule type dude that you put underneath your tongue. So I think I try to frame everything with me as like, what is this trying to teach me? And so in a former life, I had always said like, oh, well, if nutrition is good and exercise is good and lifestyle is good, hopefully there doesn't have to be medication. And so it was a big slap in the face when it was like, cool, well, here we are, 29 years old, hormone replacement therapy, again, still taking thyroid meds as well. So it's a very fascinating time for me because it really opened the window to, okay, this is, for some people, this does become a necessary thing. And who would have thought that somebody that tries so fucking hard would end up being one of them?
What are some of those practices that you apply now to reduce stress in your life?
Ooh. So I think the biggest thing is just coming to terms with my life and what it is, which is currently present day, I have about 20 or 25 nutrition clients. We have a gym program with hundreds and hundreds of people. And then, social media wise, I'm traveling 2 to 3 times a month, writing. I think at this point there's over 300 blogs on my website. So, I'm chronically researching, writing articles and stuff like that. And so it's just like, I live a stressful life and by choice.
That doesn't sound like you're reducing stress.
And so it's just kind of understanding like this is also the way I enjoy, running my life. And so it's just optimizing. And so I would just say it's more just having non-negotiables where it's like, sleep has to be a big priority. And I'm really big on like, hey, if I didn't sleep, 7.5 hours, like you don't get to go to the gym today, Laurie. Another big one is like if I know that like when I travel, I get really stressed. And so I have a big thing where it's like, hey, if I fly home on a Monday, I don't get to train that next day. It's like, just come home, get back into routine. And that's been a really big thing for me because it's like if I track my HRV, like I said, like that shit was super, super bad. But then it's just like present day, I'm trying to just scale my business as much as possible to depend on other people and kind of distribute out all the things I'm doing in a day because it's it's a lot, and I'm certainly I'm a relentless little motherfucker, but it's like we're bringing people onto the team where it's like how many different things can I get off my schedule, depend on people, and sort them out. Training wise, I'm only training about 4 days a week. It's 60 minutes and that's it. I kind of just set a timer, and once it hits, that hour mark, it's like, hey, you got to get out of the gym. But like, I'm also just a lot better. Like I used to be that person that when I traveled, I would freak out about like, oh, how do I find a gym? Or, oh, I'm in a hotel. I better figure out some crazy workout to do. And I'll just do body weight. It's like, no, dude, like even here, like I've been in San Jose. I flew in yesterday. I'll be here till end of day tomorrow, but it's like 3 days off, just chilling and enjoying it. So it's just a lot of things where it's like looking, just regularly checking in with myself, but then little things too that sound very woo-woo, but it's like regular practices of journaling and meditation and just maybe like this sounds like such a simple one, but I think it's a big one. But it's like when you're constantly scrolling through social media, which, disclaimer, both of my businesses are on social media, it's like having hard boundaries on how much you're on your phone, having hard boundaries on like, there's a lot of times I'll drive in my car and I don't listen to music, or I'm trying to like not blow up my eardrums. Because again, it's all just different forms of, stress and stuff like that. So it's a lot of little things. But present day, just really trying to slow down, be present. And again, be mindful that if I'm feeling stressed out, what are the different things I can do to kind of migrate.
Do you feel like that's the hardest thing for you?
Oh, for sure. Because even, the best part is when you see it via lab work. And so I remember specifically when Dr. Becky Campbell had me pull my lab work, and it was like, she looks in and she's like, this is what launching your own business looks like. Because it is like the past year was just crazy because it's like I went from being in a very important position in a company and stepping down and being like, cool, like let's do our own thing. And it's just like when you launch your own stuff, like there's nobody there to do the work except you, So it's like it was very humbling to see like, oh, cool. This is what it looks like on lab work to run, to start and run your own businesses.
What percentage of your clientele would you say does CrossFit?
Present day, I think the cool thing is that when you consistently put out messages, you attract a certain type of client. And so when I worked for a nutrition coaching company, it's fascinating to me because it's like, I want to say I never like connected super well with those clients, but they weren't clients that, were necessarily interested in working with me because of what I had to offer. It was like they were applying initially because of the company and, that whole sector. So like now that I run my own business, people, it seems like it's like the people that want to do nutrition coaching are people that have been following me. It's like they bought all my ebooks. They've been, they're already members of our programming. I want to say they already drank the LCK Kool-Aid, but it's like they're already doing all the things that I try to promote, and then suddenly it's like it's still not enough. It's sort of like, okay, sign me up for coaching. But I think back in the day, I've kind of gone through shifts where it was like you, as a coach, you kind of specialize in certain things. So it's like when I first got into coaching, all of my clients were like clients struggling with hypothyroidism because again, it was what I talked about a lot. They knew that I was struggling with it, and they knew that it was kind of something I was very well educated and very well stepped in. And then over time, it was like when I was going through the competing phase, same thing. It was like I was attracting all the competitive athletes. And then when I started, it was like, hey, I transitioned off of hormonal birth control and, we're kind of working through the shit. Those were the types of clients I was getting was like, hey, like either I'm on hormonal birth control and I'm interested in transitioning off of it, or I transitioned off of it and things aren't going well, like help me get above it. So I think even present day now, it's like my following on social media is like 82% women. So it's like I actually miss the days of working with guys because those used to be my favorite clients. Just again, having two older brothers growing up, and like I've always been like kind of the loud, outspoken, like I just tend to jive better with dudes for that reason. So I kind of miss those days. But even present day, like I don't take on clients very much present day, but they do tend to be females that are still going through some sort of hormonal issue, whether it's, lack of a menstrual cycle, some sort of situation with PCOS, or something with hormonal birth control, whether they're on it or want to get off of it. But as far as the actual like exercise question, I would just say it depends. But I'm definitely still very much like I don't have people from the bodybuilding space, reaching out to me.
Right.
I mean, like that CrossFit following still kind of.
That's what I'm. So is it? You think it's less than 10% of the people that you're helping are in the CrossFit community, or would more than that? Like what percentage would you guess?
I would say still honestly more. I would say a majority of. I would love to actually do a poll and ask people, because it's like when I started my social media, so long ago, I feel like the people and stuff like that has very much shifted. But I think for sure it's like I would say probably closer to like 75 or 80% for sure.
Oh, dude. Okay. So that's so what made me why I asked that is because when we were talking earlier, you kind of made a comment like you don't really discourage people from doing that. I would think from your history and what you've gone through, and also knowing your awareness, that you would probably discourage most people that you help from even being involved in CrossFit at all, even if it is something they love to do and exercise that way.
Yeah, I think, again, like it just comes back to like I'm more concerned with just helping people find what's right for them. And like I don't regret CrossFitting in any way. And I still, even I used to be on seminar staff for the gymnastics sector and stuff like that. Like I fucking loved CrossFit. CrossFit just didn't love me, was kind of the coming to Jesus. And so I think same thing, it's helping people just recognize what are you doing, and then asking, does it work for you, or how's that working?
Yeah,
out
but
for
isn't
you?
that it though? I mean, that's in my experience, I've found that most of us are not doing the things that we should be doing. And like we said earlier in the show, the people that that gravitate towards CrossFit are the worst people that should be doing it. So that's where I'm heading with this. Is like I get where as a coach and as a trainer, we want to encourage people to exercise because and doing something is better than nothing. But sometimes I don't know if that statement rings true, especially when you talk about the way we train in CrossFit, and then the type of person that tends to be attracted to that. More often than not, unless you're somebody who's training for the games or to be an athlete, because that's where I see a separation, because that's just no different than a football player who wants to be a pro football player, or a basketball player that wants to be a basketball player. I would never tell him, stop playing your sport because you want to do that sport. So unless you're coaching athletes that are actually trying to go to the games, everybody else, I would think that you would discourage from even doing CrossFit.
Yeah, I would say this, because again, most of my content is either talking about just, how to improve quality of life, how to improve, body composition or work towards the body that you want, or, just how to bounce back from hormonal issues, adrenal issues and stuff like that. So it's like, I would say across the board, I'm always just promoting people like, do stuff that isn't high intensity. Like I feel like for a while, like the whole HIIT sector was so popular and so booming. And it's just like, guys, like I get it. Spin class is fun. I get it. Orange Theory is fun. I get it. CrossFit is fun. But it's just not conducive. Like you can't fucking slam your body into the floor and then question why you're having, issues and stuff. And so I think it's just the whole lifestyle of, again, it's like I remember when I used to train where it was like, I didn't take rest days. And like I had literal anxiety because it's like you have training partners that you get, very attached to, right? And you'd be like, hey, see you tomorrow at 6 a.m. Well, what the fuck happens when it's 6 it's time to go to the gym and you're like, man, I feel like dog shit, but I gotta show up for these people. And again, it's just such a slippery slope. And so it's fucking hard, dude. Like it's so hard because you can't make blanket statements. But, I think you guys are in the same boat where it's like CrossFit can do some good. And, it gets people into lifting. It gets people intro to a certain world. But it's like there's so many better ways. There's so much more efficient ways, and there's so many more better ways to do things.
Laurie, when you started to reduce your training and you were trying to balance your hormones out naturally, was that also when you then started your own business?
So there was probably, I would say there was a 6 or 7 month gap.
So you went 6 months off the hard training, but then you started your own business. And do you think that the stress from starting your own business might have been a similar stress to the training too much?
Like we just picked up where we left off, in my opinion. I think that even work wise, because when I left the company that I was working for at the time, it was like there were 15 or 16 coaches that I was overseeing. We were traveling 1 to 2 times a month teaching nutrition certification courses. And then I had upwards of, like 125 or 130 clients. So it's like my job stuff was already very stressful. And then you added in the fact of like, okay, shoulder surgery. Okay, trying to transition off of hormonal birth control. Okay, you're traveling all the time. Oh, hey, you're trying to figure out this new thing of like, hey, I know my body's really overstressed, but I think I want to train less. It was just like the past 2 years of my life were a dumpster fire if I really, really dial back and look at it. But I think, again, like that's why I'm such a good coach is it's like I get people that come to me and it's like, oh, been there, done that.
Yeah, it's like the body, you have like this bucket that you can fill with stress, and it's really any stress, right? It could be physical, it could be mental, it could be emotional. And, do you ever encounter this with clients where, I've worked with people and they'll be like, but I'm not working out that much and I'm getting good sleep. And it's like, yes, but your other stress is so high.
Yeah.
And do you think that it's addictive? In other words, do you think that being under stress can be addictive to some individuals?
Oh yeah, it's a series of like, what do I do with my hands? Because it's like
cortisol junkies.
Yeah.
Cortisol drips. I think like where I instantly went with your previous question was like shift workers are a really good example of this, where it's like trying to explain to a shift worker that maybe it's not super conducive to still train the way that somebody would train if they were just, air quotes, regular person. So it's like there's a lot of shift workers where it'll be like, yeah, I'm training 5 to 6 days a week and 3 days a week. I do this thing, I work overnight. And it's like, if you're a shift worker, you might actually feel really optimal only training 2 to 3 days a week because your stress that 3 days when you're working those 12 hours or in the emergency room or again, as a paramedic or a firefighter, whatever, it's like, stress is still stress to the body and your body can't differentiate it. And so it's like, that's a really hard thing because again, for a lot of people, it's like, oh, but I love exercise because it's really stress relieving. It's like, motherfucker, you have to learn other ways to moderate yourself that aren't just beating your body into the floor with more stress. And that was a lesson I learned really hard when I had shoulder surgery because it was like, oh, I can't do anything. I'm really stressed out about work. What the fuck do I do? And so it was like I had to learn that life skill when I had shoulders.
When you were in the position of, because you said a couple months ago or a few months ago, I think, or when you had to go on hormone replacement, where you said it was a slap in the face to you, right? Because you were talking about getting the body naturally to where you should get it or where it could get or whatever. Were you confronted with the question of like, okay, I'm in this situation, quality of life isn't good. I need to either do hormone replacement therapy or I need to still reduce more stress, which may be the business or whatever. Were you in that position and said, okay, no, I'm going to do the hormones because I can't?
I think the biggest thing is, like I said, when I really looked at it, I'm always down the crunchy rabbit holes where it's like, if you look in my bathroom, it's all like paraben free, sulfate free. It's like, so it's like, all of my environmental exposures, like I use, the little stasher bags rather than plastic bags and rather than drinking out of plastic, like I've got this stainless steel. It's like I was doing all the crunchy stuff. I was also doing all the sexy stuff of eating cruciferous vegetables and eating sprouts. And, my doctor has me on this liver detoxification support supplement. And I'm doing all this gut health stuff. So it was just like, what's the alternative? Like, I think the biggest tipping point for me was when you look at lab work, so in my case, again, I had low estrogen, low testosterone. The irony was my progesterone levels were great. So like I still ovulate every single month. Like I want to say I'm super fertile, but it's like technically if I wanted to get pregnant, I probably wouldn't have a problem because most people don't ovulate. Most people have anovulatory cycles. But so what was happening specifically was during the first half of my cycle, during my follicular phase, I'd feel fine. But then during the second half, it was like my mood was really struggling. And it was like being super down in the dumps, just experiencing like severe mood swings up and down. But again, just like severe depression, severe anxiety to the point that like it was getting crippling. And so it was like I was seeing every single month, it was like, fuck, man, like this is getting worse and worse and worse. And so like I remember I texted my doctor and I was asking her, I was like, okay, like are there any natural supplements that support estrogen levels? Like I understand part of this is just, again, like I've got such a severe difference between my estrogen and progesterone ratios. And she was like, no, dude, everything that, you know, we think of we could do, like you're already doing it. And so I think it was probably like a week later, like I kind of marinated on the idea of just like, okay, we're out of options. So it's either continue to feel super fucking shitty or hopefully, you know, feel better.
And how many hours a day were you working at this time? This is why you were running your business or starting it?
Yeah. So I've been running my own business for a little over a year and a couple months now. But I would say in general, like I'm a workhorse. So like if I have both like a blessing and a curse, it's like I don't know how to not work hard. Mm-hmm. So it's like if I decide I want to do something, like shit's gonna happen. But I mean, I would say in general, like I'm definitely I probably log. You know, it's like I'll start my workday at 8 or 9 p.m. and probably shut it down, you know, 7 or 8 at night. Mm-hmm. So it's like I've got very long work days. But I think it was more just, again, it's like it kind of looking and you're like, okay, like when mood stuff's starting to get a little bit scary, if like you just have to address that. And so same thing, it was like I reached out to my doctor, and again, like that's the other part of his practice is hormone replacement therapy. And it was like, what is the smallest dose we can get to just hopefully get back up to normal? And then the goal is like, again, we'll be probably in the next month, we'll retest again, you know, see what levels are looking like. And then see, okay, you know, now that we're kind of up back towards a happy range, can we transition off? Or at this point, again, it's like when you feel so bad, like everybody needs the permission to just feel good. Like
that's why this is such an important conversation, because you could be in a situation where, I in my opinion, I think starting your business and the stress of that, and obviously you are, I mean, I've known you now for 45 minutes, and I could tell you 100% you're a workhorse. I could tell.
How you do anything is how you do everything.
Yeah, and that probably contributed to all of that attitude, that mentality probably contributed to your body's,
for sure.
Having hormone issues. But at some point, it's a quality of life thing.
Yeah.
I know when Adam went off testosterone.
I was just going to go here. I was going to ask, and not to cut you off, Sal, but I got to ask you this because I'm listening to you tell your story, and I'm wondering, when was the last time in your life that you trained 2 days a week or less? And for how long of a period of time did you do that?
It would be a very short-term thing. I think that present day I could handle it. I think I have a very good perception on how I'm personally feeling. I do a really good job of just checking in where it's like, you know, like we feel like shit in the gym, you know, like let's take a deload or let's take, 4 or 5 days off. But I think the biggest thing with hormone replacement therapy in general is just making sure it's not the first step, right? Like people want the magic pill, people want the easy answer, but it's like, I would hope that everyone would do the same thing I did, which is like you hire a doctor and you have, very talented professionals in your corner. But it's like you look at your nutrition, you look at your exercise, your lifestyle, your gut health, your liver health, your adrenal health. You prioritize things like sleep, and you prioritize resting and relaxing more than you're stressing your body with things like exercise, and prioritizing food quality. You're starting with all of the core foundations to that before you go on testosterone or before you start taking things. So I think the hardest thing is like, again, a lot of people from just what I've personally seen, it's like when people go on bioidentical progesterone, people go on some sort of testosterone replacement therapy, a lot of times the doctors are starting at such a drastic dose so that they immediately feel better, but that might not necessarily be the best case. So I think it's just like starting small. So like even with thyroid meds, it's like you want to give the person the least amount, see how they respond and wait. Okay, thyroid meds, or your thyroid levels didn't really drastically improve this 6 weeks. Cool, let's take it up a little bit more, retest. And so I think it's just, again, like test, retest, but really having somebody that's willing to listen rather than just...
Absolutely. And in my opinion, it's a quality of life thing, and people need to realize that if they've done something or damage to their body for a long period of time, it could take a very long period of time to come back to normal. And you have to either be willing to do that, and is that trade-off worth the loss of quality of life during that period, or is supplementing with hormone or whatever going to be better for you and your quality of life? And this is a very individual thing. I mean, and I was going to use Adam as an example. He was on testosterone for years, maintenance levels and then competitive levels as a competitive physique competitor. He went off testosterone. He tried a couple times, was terrible. Then he weaned it down slowly, then went completely off. And I think it took him, how long did it take for you to get back to normal?
Bro, it's almost 2 years now.
2 years, and now the testosterone levels are in that normal range. But there was months of depression that the guy was going through.
And not only that, and that's why I was kind of alluding to the training thing, because this was a very difficult thing for me. Being a competitive athlete, loving training, loving exercise, but also realizing that the training was not conducive to me getting my hormone levels back. And sure, a very small dose. And my training for probably 6 months to close to a year was 2-3 days a week tops. It was weak as fuck in the gym. It was terrible. It was depressing. It took everything in me to just get in there and to move. I couldn't train with the competitive mindset that I had, because what I'd find is if I do that, I would backslide. And man, we were testing on me every, 3 months or so, and I was not moving. I have my cycle ready to go. It's been ready to go for 7 months now.
I remember you said something like, okay, if it's not normal in this next test, I'm going to go on, because his quality of life was, the poor guy was, and he's one of the strongest, mentally strong people I've ever met. And he was at that point. And it's a very important conversation, because you can go on the natural side, which I think is the right side. However, we can get very judgy with ourselves and other people, and you have to weigh things out. Sure, could you go back and say, okay, I still have too much stress. Starting my business was part of it. Maybe that's part of the reason. Or you could say, no, this is important to me. And I'm at the point now where I want the quality of my life to improve. And that's why modern medicine exists. And I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, but I do think that it shouldn't be the first option for people, because oftentimes the root cause, solving that, you end up with the best quality of life
so
overall.
The equivalent, right, is like, let's say somebody is like, this isn't quite as deep in the weeds as like low testosterone issues, right? But it's like there's so many things where it's like root cause just always wins. So it's like, how many people would be like, I'm struggling with really bad acne, like I think I need to go on the pill. And it's like, did you try removing dairy? Like, have you tried removing gluten? Do you wash your fucking bed sheets, once a week? Are you using natural detergents? What quality of cosmetics and skincare and hair care products, are we using safer products? It's like getting people to look at that root cause is really, really important too. But it's like, it takes
more work.
Yeah,
that's the difference. It's like, go to the doctor, get Accutane, or gotta fix my gut health, gotta look at all my cosmetics, gotta pay attention to how things affect me. Like, it's a lot of work.
But I think the bigger thing to understand though too is it's like medication to agree. Still can't get ahead of your shitty habits, right? So it's like if somebody, for example, like with thyroid stuff, it's like, again, if your thyroid levels are operating so far down below, it's like medication needs to,
because it can get dangerous.
Yeah, it can get dangerous. Like you need the medication to get you up. But it's a two-part transaction, because for so many people, they go to the doctor, they have certain symptoms where it's like, oh, having weight gain, I'm having hair loss, my fingers are cold, all this bullshit. But it's like they take medication, but then they don't see things get better because, again, they're not addressing the root of like, hey man, well, like if you're in a caloric deficit, that can also cause subclinical thyroid levels. Like that happens.
At the very least, too, that it'll mask signals. So if you're, let's say you're a female and you're just not training appropriately for your body, your stress level's too high, you're not eating enough, not getting good sleep, whatever. It's not working for you. Your hormones will send you that signal. You'll feel like shit, maybe be real fatigued, have difficulty losing weight or building muscle. You go to the doctor, they'll test your hormones. Those hormone levels are a symptom of something else. And if you replace those hormones, you've now eliminated or masked the signals. And so, and it is a can that you continue to kick down the road. I see this with male athletes too, where these guys who they're like, oh, I'm on just testosterone replacement therapy, so it's not the same as being, pharmaceutically enhanced or whatever. It's like, actually it is. It's very similar because for a normal man, if I do things that are wrong for my body, my testosterone levels drop. Yours always stay consistent. You don't get that same feedback. And hormone levels, this is another thing we might want to consider, is hormone levels in normal ranges when all these root issues aren't solved may not be a good thing. For example, estrogen in the wrong type of environment can be pro-cancer. Testosterone levels, high testosterone levels in a man who isn't taking care of himself properly can actually fuel cancers and be inflammatory or cause heart issues. Now, high testosterone in a healthy man, because his body's producing that testosterone, is healthy, perfectly healthy. So there's a lot of things that we need to consider. But at the end of the day, and I want to make this point because we're going between, solving the root cause and being natural about things and then, using modern medicine. It's your quality of life. So you have to decide that for yourself at the end of the day, like how is my quality? And it can take there's some theories that the central nervous system has a memory. And so if you beat the shit out of yourself for years and years and years, and then you're like, but I've been perfect for 6 months. Like you got to give it longer time, man. It might take much longer than you might think. It might take, like in Adam's case, 2 years.
And I was only abused. I'm gonna say abused but I was only taking higher levels of testosterone for 4 years. So this isn't like I don't.
Yeah, a lot of women will be on birth control.
Yeah, I don't fall in the category of.
And that's what I was gonna. That was instantly where my brain went. Is like, at the end of the day, for women, it's like your menstrual cycle is your fifth vital sign, right? It's like, and that's part of the issue is like people aren't conditioned to care about women's health and people don't understand the impacts that it can have. And so for me, it was like, I went on hormonal birth control at 16. I had really, really bad acne and I had really, really bad menstrual cycles. So same thing. It was like I was that person that like I'd skip school or like I'd be curled up on the couch. And it's like, well, the doctor never said like, hey man, like maybe it's the fact that you're slathering your face. Maybe you have acne because you're eating tons of sugar. You're a traditional teenager that fucking spams, Red Bull and pizza and all this dairy and gluten. Maybe it's the fact that you're using drugstore makeup and skincare. Like you haven't licked a vegetable in 6 months, you're not getting enough fiber, you're not drinking enough water. Like there's never that conversation. The doctor is just like, oh, you have acne, you just take this thing, cool. And so again, it's like, what a crazy spiral that that might have contributed to thyroid issues later. But it's like, for 12 years, I didn't have a menstrual cycle, so I didn't know that I was overtraining. Because again, it's like your body tells you so many things, right? So again, it's like if you're getting back to like if your chief symptom is like, yeah, I know it's weird. Like I wake up multiple times a night. Like where my head instantly goes is a lot of different questions where it's like, well, okay, like what do your blood sugar levels look like? How are we eating? Are you overtraining? Is your CNS just getting fried by deadlifts and high intensity exercise? But, with hormonal birth control, it's like so many women don't understand all the things that it comes from. But again, it's like a woman's menstrual cycle and like your hormone levels should vary, throughout the month and go up and down. And yet with hormonal birth control, it's almost just like the flat line across where it's like you're in this controlled environment 24/7.
It changes how we perceive things very subtly. We had Dr. Jolene Brighton on the show. I know you know who she is. And she talks about changes your, how you choose mates, the way you think and stuff. So there's a lot of these effects that are downstream. It reminds me of, I used to train a lot of clients in advanced age, and sometimes they would bring me oftentimes they would bring me their medication list because I'd have to talk to the doctor. And I'd look at their medications and I'd realize that half of them were to counteract the side effects of the other half. Mm-hmm. So it's like, why are you taking this laxative? Oh, because this one makes me constipated. Why are you taking this for for fatigue. Oh, because this one causes me to get drowsy. And I'm like, oh wow, we're plugging holes this whole time, and that kind of stuff happens, downstream.
I think the crazy thing, right? Like if you talk about like how the concept of like how to naturally balance your hormones, it isn't a lot of times like taking super sexy, supplements or anything. It's like
it's mostly never that.
It's literally the basics of like, yo, man, you getting enough sleep at night? Like, cool. Training. Are you training enough, but like not too much? What does your food look like? Are you eating tons of processed foods? Are you getting enough, carbohydrates for your activity? Are you eating tons of sugar and bullshit? Or is it high quality food?
Here's one for you that blows people away is it's not just the activity, but it's how you do the activity. I could easily sit here and stress myself the fuck out and not move. And I could exercise and relax the hell out of myself, all because of where my mental state is. And a lot of people need to understand that, because I think you get the type A individuals who are like, I'm doing all the things and I'm doing them perfect and I'm fucking trying my hardest.
Shit out of this.
Yeah, but it's like, that's like, I remember when I first learned how to meditate, I used to have this side facility to my wellness studio that had group classes, and I had a meditation expert come in, and he was trying to teach me how to meditate, and he goes, Sal, you can't meditate by trying harder. It doesn't work that way. That's the opposite of meditation. I remember being like, oh shit, that makes perfect sense. One other thing too, Laurie, I think would be important that we make a point on is that because women naturally have hormonal fluctuations, and because the female body is the one that carries a baby, they're also more sensitive to stressors, activity, and exercise, whereas a man's tends to be a little bit more resilient. Doesn't mean we're all like way more resilient, but a woman's body, like if you do prolonged fasting and hard activity, a man's body tends to be more resilient with that kind of stuff, whereas a woman's immediately switches
nutrition
and changes
stuff, man,
faster.
Well, because they're responsible for reproducing.
Right, yeah. Right. So maybe we could talk about some of those differences, because I know a lot of women would be like, but my boyfriend works out that way and the guys do that way. And I'm like, well, the female body's a little bit different. Actually, it's in my opinion, there's benefits and detriments.
Yeah.
You can't beat yourself up as much, but your body's way more sensitive to signals around you and within you. And if you pay attention to those, you can become like a psychic of what's happening with you. Yeah, like a total wizard.
So I think the biggest thing, exactly as you said, is like, okay, if females exist to bear babies, there's just more stopgaps in play to keep us safe, right? And so I think the biggest thing worth mentioning is when we look at studies on diets, whether, if we do a study on keto, if we do a study on carnivore, very rarely are they done on women.
Great point.
And so part of that is just, again, like, we can't even get studies on women started because we have to go back to basic questions of, well, do you have a menstrual cycle? Are you taking hormonal birth control? Oh, well, if you're taking hormonal birth control,
you can't go to study.
Like there's like, and that's where it stops. And so it's like understanding that simply that, like there's not tons of studies simply done on women. But exactly as you said, it's like we end up with a lot of this empirical data. Like I love when people ask, how do you feel about keto with, keto for women? I'm like, I fucking hate it more times than not. How do you feel about intermittent fasting for women? More times than not, I fucking hate it. And so it's like, again, like every single type of diet works. Every single type of diet can have application. The question is, is it right for you? But it took me, like, I recently just published my second ebook, and it was titled, the Badass Guide to Fat Loss, Gaining and Maintaining. But so what I did with each particular diet was just mapping through, okay, like, A, what is it? B, what are my personal experiences or thoughts or what have I seen with clients, talking about how, to implement it, but then talking about a lot of big things to watch out for. And so it's like, for women, it's like, I don't like seeing low-fat diets over time. Like, cholesterol is a precursor for hormones, the fucking end. So like, in a diet phase, could you cut fat as your source of calories, and could you see fat loss? Sure. But we also see a huge sector of women where it's like, maybe you're following templated nutrition, or you're working with a coach that has you on, 30 to 50 grams of fat a day. those are your people that you look like a fucking wizard coach because they say, hey, I haven't seen a menstrual cycle in 2 years. Can you help me? And, you look at the food logs and you're like, oh, well, this will be easy.
Yep.
You slam them up to, say 70 to 80 grams of fat. You give it a month and it's like, oh,
I got my
first
period.
menstrual cycle. Like it's so bad. But same thing on the carbohydrate side. It's like, I kind of work off of like minimum. So it's like when I'm looking at women, again, like your caloric need is going to vary based off of so many things. But it's like, I don't like to see women at, my minimums for like fat intake would be like a minimum of like 60 to 75 grams of fat, a minimum of 150, 250 grams of carbs, and maybe even more. If you do competitively, exercise, you're doing tons of training, it's like you might need, 300 grams of carbs if you're an active motherfucker.
And you can also cycle them. I mean, you can also go through some days are lower carbs and much higher fat, and other days are, because that's probably how we ate naturally. But I love that you brought this up because you're absolutely right. Most studies are done on a population that does not reflect the average woman. Most of them are done on men, and if the women that are in the studies are many of them are on hormonal birth control, just because most women are on hormonal birth control. That's a very, very important thing to point out. Here's a good example, especially recently. I'd say over the last 5 years, we've been inundated with studies showing the benefits of coffee. It's healthy. It's full of antioxidants. Caffeine's great for dopamine, great for the brain. In my experience, and this isn't specifically with women, caffeine can be terrible. Now, not for always, but when I'm dealing with a woman who has too much stress, working out too much, this is most women who would hire me, lowering their caffeine or eliminating their caffeine had tremendous benefits. But the studies would show that, and they'd bring these studies to me, like, this study says coffee's so good for me, I should keep taking it. It's like, no, that doesn't apply to you. These studies were done on totally different people. So I'm so glad you brought that up.
I think the hardest thing about studies too is also understanding that they're always going to be a little behind. So it's like, we're going to see these things, if it's doctors working with clients or if it's coaches working with people, like we see this shit long before somebody has the idea of like, yo, let's slam this in a research study. And I think like that's the hard part is, a lot of times, it's always like, oh, show me the research or show me this. And it's like, fuck, man, like I can tell you that, in the past, I went to school, graduated. So I started all this, almost 12 years ago. It's like, I can tell you a lot of things that I've seen observations from working with thousands of people that, again, are you going to see research studies on this? No, but it's, again, it's like for women, it's like, okay, well, if you're struggling with thyroid issues or hormone issues, being low carb probably isn't going to help. Like it seems like, again, it's like carbs are very necessary to that situation. Again, it's like, ironically, if I was going to ping three things where it's like, if you have hormone issues, don't be low carb, don't be low fat, and don't be low calorie. Well, what is there, right? That's like just being kind of more, it's like the longer that I coach, the more unbiased I get, where it's just like, hey man, like let's have ample amounts of fucking everything over here.
Yeah, you don't want the body to think that you're in a state of partial starvation, or I hate using that term, but when you're going low fat or really low carb or really low protein, the body starts to think that, okay, we're not around a lot of stuff. And again, men are far more resilient to this than women are. And of course, there's an individual variance, depends on the person. But 100%, you see women go keto long term, and you start to notice more so in women issues with thyroid or even with antibodies where their body's not utilizing the thyroid
I think
like it's supposed to.
Kind of like a fun note to kind of explain to listeners too is just like for women, your menstrual cycle is always going to be about 3 months behind. So with guys, it's like you kind of get a quicker feedback report of like what you're doing on life, right? It's like, well, if I suddenly, if I'm a guy and I suddenly stop waking up with a morning wood, like, okay, like something I'm doing isn't working for me. It's probably a little bit easier.
And it's a pretty fast signal.
But for women, it's like I just got a DM the other day where it was like, dude, it's so weird. Like right now, I'm reverse dieting. Like I wasn't eating any food. I was at the bottom of a caloric deficit, and now that I am dialing up my food, my menstrual cycle didn't come this month. And it's like, well, again, like your body's still so far behind. Like your follicles take about 100 days to develop.
Oh,
and
so you got to look that far back.
Yeah. So I had a client who she got married. And so something very, very similar happened where it was like she, obviously weddings are super stressful, went on a honeymoon and was traveling all over the place. And so it was like a few months later, same thing. She was going through a lot of menstrual issues she had never had before. And it was like, well, dude, like we have to look back at what you were doing. And so I think that's the most important thing to kind of reiterate to people is like, you could be doing everything right present day because you realize, there were situations that we need to improve, but like you have to kind of look in retrospect too and see, okay, well, 3 months ago, sure enough, I was cutting for, a weightlifting meet. I wasn't eating, hardly any calories. Well, okay, that makes sense
some time.
that, menstrual cycle is going to be whack.
Something you had said earlier in the episode a few times was working on people's behaviors and helping them change behaviors. And we say this all the time on the show. That's really the only way to help someone long term. It's the behaviors you have to work with, not necessarily count calories, count macros, or whatever. What are some strategies and techniques and ways you've been able to help people modify their behaviors when they have, let's say, restrictive binge type behaviors, or where they have bad relationships to food or exercise? Like, what are some of the things you help coach them through to help them with those behaviors?
I think it's going to be super individual, and I'm going to put the giant asterisk again that like if somebody has eating disorder tendencies as a coach, they are out of scope for you, right? And it's super heartbreaking. It's hard to have that conversation, but it's like, if at the end of the day you're filling out a client, application or whatever, and it's like, oh yeah, by the way, I binge. Yikes, like you're out of scope.
Yeah,
right?
if it's clinical binging, yeah, definitely.
So I think that's just important to mention. But it's so individual because I think for a lot of people, like the topic of binging is so fascinating to me because more times than not, things just get distorted. And so what I mean by that is like for some people, they might define their binging as every Saturday I fly off the rails. I end up having pizza and ice cream and all that stuff. And so sometimes it's just looking at, well, is it actually a binge? Like calorically, what are we putting down? And so simply telling somebody like, hey, if this is going down, like, can you just somehow document what you're actually eating, right? Because it's like people will say they're binging, but if you looked calorically, maybe they're really only eating, 300, 400 extra calories. And so in their mind, it's more just they're eating foods that they've defined as, air quotes bad. Like it's like, oh, pizza's bad and ice cream's bad and I ate all it. And it's like, it's actually, again.
They're just judging it afterwards.
Yeah, it's just like a state of like, dude, you overate, 300, 400 calories. For some people, you see this interesting tendency where it's like maybe they're in, they hold it down Monday through Friday. They're super restrictive, they're quote unquote eating clean and you're doing all the right things. And then it's like same thing on Saturday. They fly off the rails. They can't stop putting food in their mouth. They're so hungry, they just blow it out. And so a lot of times it's just looking, well, are you eating enough calories on the regular Monday through Friday? Because if your body's in this restricted state, right, where it's like, well, now you have 5 days of exercise under your belt. You have 5 days of not eating enough calories for how much you're exercising. And then your body forces you to kind of blow it out on Saturday because it's just like, fuck, man, I need food. For a lot of people, it's just like chronic under eating can be a really, really big nudge towards that whole, again, air quotes on binging tendency. So just looking for people, it's like, well, fuck, dude, if you're a 6 foot male and you're eating, 1,600 calories and you should be eating 3,000 calories on the daily, like
you're going to have a 5,000 calorie day.
Like shit's going to get fucking weird because your body just doesn't know what else to do. So I think just kind of looking again at the bigger picture of like, how much food are you currently eating? Because so many people have people are resistant to tracking their food. People are resistant to, oh, I don't want to weigh and measure. Oh, that's so OCD, or oh, that's so obsessive.
It brings awareness.
It brings awareness. Like you wouldn't fucking do a science experiment and just not measure anything. And so it's like when you have actual metrics, like you can't argue.
Flat Earth.
I think some people they don't want that awareness, so they want to be
absolutely
unaware
that's what it is.
of what's actually happening. Something that I found that was very common. I think when it comes to binging, it's more of the mentality and behavior around it, not so much the fact that you're eating more food, like you said. I think judging it afterwards, you're probably just eating a little more because you need to. But what I found is that when people are in that unaware, that state of unawareness and just eating, It's not about the food that they have. It's about the food that they want. And so, I think we've all experienced this to some degree, especially if you've ever dieted down and gotten super shredded and then come out of that. You'll notice that while you're chewing whatever you're chewing, you can't wait to get the next one. And it really has nothing to do about what's in your mouth. You're not even enjoying the taste. It's all about wanting. And if that's the behavior that you find yourself having, then yeah, you may have some binging tendencies. That might be the situation. Do you advocate for like journaling and writing down how you feel while you're eating and whatnot? Does that help?
Yeah, so that's journaling is a big practice I'm having a lot of my clients do. And so I think for a lot of people, it seems overwhelming at first because it's like, well, where do I start? And, so again, like sometimes I give them very specific prompts, for like, hey, well, like we don't love our body when we look in the mirror, right? Or like you're communicating to me like you're super uncomfortable with your body right now. You don't like particular things. And so like almost just going back to like, why is that? Because for a lot of people, it comes from interesting places where it's like they dislike their body and their body appearance because it actually comes from a place of just simply wanting to be more loved in life, or it's just they don't have the skill of just acceptance, right? So like I think that you guys have been putting out some interesting, like Sal, I know you made a post the other day just talking about like you don't train quite as hard as you used to and you're okay with it, right? But it's like I have a pregnant mom right now, and I say pregnant loosely because she's postpartum, but so she just had her second kid, and so she's really struggling this time because it was like, man, my first child, this was so much easier. And, I made the mistake of looking back at pictures, where I was 3 months ago after, the first baby, and I'm just not there anymore. And so it's like right now, like journaling is such a good practice for her because it's like, hey, man, like when you looked like this previously, you were also feeling like shit. Mm-hmm. You were training double the amount of time. You're doing so much more stuff. And so it's like just getting people to kind of unpack these heavy rucksacks of emotion.
Our bodies and ourselves crave love most from one person, and that's ourselves. And if you don't care for yourself, and this is the thing about love. Love doesn't mean like you can have a child. This might be easier for people to understand. You can have a kid and you can objectively say your kid's not perfect. I don't think real good parents will know that their kids aren't perfect. Like, yeah, my kid's not perfect. He doesn't do this or she doesn't do that or whatever. Do you still love your kid? Oh, absolutely. So that's what I mean by love. Not looking at yourself and being like, I'm perfect. That's not love. That doesn't exist. It's looking at yourself or thinking about yourself and like, I care about myself. If you can't do that, you're going to necessarily always be seeking for it. And the way you're going to be seeking for it is by trying to achieve this ideal that's impossible. And it's a never-ending cycle of chasing that ideal. It's a never-ending cycle of looking more perfect, being being better, being a different person. And you're just going to, it's a spiral that'll never end and eventually turns into, can turn into devastating travesty.
Well, I think the thing is like body positivity isn't, my body's so great. I look amazing 24/7, 365. Like body positivity and body awareness is like my body is great regardless of what it looks like.
My body is my body. I care about it and I love myself. That's all it is. You can objectively look at yourself and say, "Oh, I have more body fat on my body than is probably healthy." But that doesn't mean I don't love myself or care about myself. Because I'm not perfect just like anyone else. And again, if you don't care about yourself truly, you will necessarily always be seeking for it. And sometimes you seek for it in the wrong places, and it may even be from other people. It may affect your relationships with other people. And I just want to make this point because there's this body acceptance movement, and I think people confuse it, and they think that it means that love. Like I'm gonna take my objectivity out. No, I love my body no matter what. I'm perfect. Like, okay, I get what you're trying to say, but that's not how it works. Because if you go down that path, it's not going to work either. Yeah. It's totally, totally different. These must be conversations you have with clients all the time.
The body positivity sector is very fascinating to me. But I think the biggest thing is just, again, like you can accept your body while also working towards the best body for you. And so I think the biggest thing is just like your best body weight is the one that allows you to show up and do the things you want to do and live the life you want to live. And so we can't go out and party 24/7 and eat fast food and bullshit, but then also be like, but I really, really want to look like a CrossFit Games athlete and have a shredded six pack. And it's like things have to line up. And so I think that's just, again, like the concept of acceptance is a really hard one because it's something that you're going to be working on the rest of your life and the rest of the time you're on planet Earth. But just also reframing too, that's like, the people that love you don't love you for the way that you look. You know, it's like we all at the end of the day, like we're going to get buried in the ground and eaten by worms. And I promise that like nobody's going to be, you know, you're not going to be on your deathbed and people are going to be like, man, you know, I wish Susan was so fat, you know, all this. It's like people remember you for why you're great and, you know, the things that you do for them and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And so I think from a very young age, we associate so much value with how we look. And, you know, especially I would say the women's sector, it's like we are valued for what we look like and, oh, she's pretty.
Well, you're told that. You're marketed to fucking hell like that. I mean, you look at all marketing and it's going to show you what the marketing values, which is getting people's attention. The easiest way to get people's attention is with attractive, sexy young people.
Yeah.
And so you're constantly being told that that's very, very valuable. And the problem happens, or the issue is when you confuse body image for self-image. They're totally different. Your self-image is not your body. I can have a body image. I can look in the mirror and say, my feet don't look funny, or I'm losing my hair. Like, that's okay. Self-image, totally different. Do you remember when you were able to separate the two? Because confusing the two, it sounds like that's what you did for a long time. I was the same way.
Yeah, well, like I would just say this, like when all of my social media stuff started taking off, like I remember having a specific conversation with my business partner where, you know, because we were cracking jokes about something. And like I just remember reinforcing the idea that like, if I'm going to end up with a big social media following, I don't want it to be because, you know, like I'm showing my ass off on Instagram or because I'm pretty. It's like, I want to be known as somebody that's a smart motherfucker, you know, just bringing intelligence to the table and able to have, you know, really, really good conversations and stuff like that. And so I think for me personally, it was just like the past couple of years, I really had to work through different narratives because it's like I spent 6.5 years of my life in a super abusive relationship. And same thing, it was like the one thing I always heard over and over again was how, you know, ugly I was and how, you know, various things about my body were horrific and all this stuff. And so it took a really long time to, again, just like work. I think, you know, from like 20 to 30 now, it's like I've really worked through a lot of things and kind of come out on the other side. But it's like even when I look back at interesting tendencies I had, it's like I was ashamed of my body. And so the way that manifests in real life was like I always wore head to toe all black clothing, even though like I've never been overweight in my life. You know, it's like I've always been very fit, very athletic. And so just kind of understanding that like regardless of your size, you like everybody still struggles with body images, right? Or there's just so many interesting tendencies that I had where it was like, you know, if I knew that I was going to the pool or even like if I knew I was going to have sex with somebody later, like I'd starve myself all day so that I, you know, again, air quotes, looked better in the moment. And I think that there's a lot of tendencies like that people actually do carry. And so when you kind of start getting into the mental health and getting into the body image and self-image, like things get so messy. And so when you start working through these things with clients again, because it's like women, it'll be fascinating where it's like I've had several clients where it was like because they didn't have a good relationship with herself and, you know, didn't say nice things in the mirror, it would manifest in interesting ways where it was like they would date down or they would go for guys that it was like, dude, like you're gorgeous. Like you're gorgeous, you're smart, you're funny, you're intelligent, you're successful, and you can do so much better. Or, you know, they would go hook up relentlessly with guys and just
you cannot separate health and just say just fitness or just it's all health. And that's why I think it's important that as fitness professionals, you don't have to be an expert in all of them. In fact, you won't be. It's impossible or it's highly unlikely. But acknowledge and understand that that's part of it, because if I'm not acknowledging and taking that into account, I would oftentimes refer clients to therapists, and then I'd work with the therapist, and I would handle the exercise portion. The therapist would handle the other stuff. And then we would meet and talk. And they would say things to me like, you know, Sal, I know you're talking to her right now about reducing her sugar intake, but here's some of the tendencies I'm noticing right now. Maybe it's not a good time to restrict that. And I'll be like, no problem. Let's take that off the table right now. And I would work with it because I acknowledged it. And boy, my success with these clients was through the roof. And I think most fitness professionals do a terrible job of that. And mainly because, let's be honest, most fitness professionals enter into the field because we're pretty fucked up.
Yeah.
I think most of us are those obsessive personalities that get into it. So,
well, and I think part of it too is just like, again, like if you're coaching somebody, or for you guys are kind of more just like personal training, whereas like I started off straight just like nutrition coaching, and then you kind of leaned into all the the actual exercise coaching. That's like the conversations I have now with people versus even if I look 2 years ago, it's like the questions I was asking was like, oh, well, okay, what does your exercise look like? What do your existing macros look like? What do your prescriptions look like? Whereas like now, present day, like the things I'm asking is like, what's your menstrual cycle look like? Or hey, again, I don't work with male clients a ton, but it would be like asking, questions about, just sexual function and, again, the concept of, do you have a morning wood and, stuff like that. But it's like I'm looking at all these sexy things present day where it's like, okay, menstrual health, hormone health, adrenal health, gut health, liver health, mental health, and checking in on those tendencies. Because again, it's like a few years ago, it was just the basics. And it's like the longer you get in the space, you realize like, golly, like it's even like I've been thinking a lot about continuing education and I'm struggling because it's like, I want to get, I want to get my foot in the door on more of these things, but it's like I almost don't know where to start because I feel like things are a little behind.
Yeah.
But it's like, again, like you just want to be a really good coach, but like how do you continue to gain more tools? And like I don't necessarily know that like certification courses are the way to go. Like people always ask like, oh, I want to get into nutrition coaching, like should I go to school for it? And I'm like, the reality of like going to school for dietetics is that I interned under 14 dietitians that were all either overweight or obese. Like everything I learned was outdated shit from the 90s. Like we literally had food pyramid in our textbooks. And, it's like, yes, I'm glad that I had that backing, but like everything that I learned about nutrition, I learned once I got into coaching and physically, going through it and working with people. The same thing, it's like when I look at certification courses and like I look at the content covered, it's like, I mean, yeah, I could add that to my quote unquote resume, but I already know how to do all this stuff. And so I think like that's the hard part is like finding ways to, continue elevating yourself as a coach. But it's like, I think that you're going to start seeing, school go into a TED Talk style of things. I think that you're going to see, traditional, college kind of go away. And then again, you're going to see kind of more like certification, more TED Talk style. Hey, I can sit on my couch, but still continue my education stuff because it's like in schools.
I agree.
Like,
I think one thing that we try to do is we try to surround ourselves with people that we respect as experts in their fields. And so we try to become more mavens. So it's like, okay, that's not my expertise, but I got the guy for you or I got the lady for you. And then everybody works together. I think that's what the future honestly is going to look like. But it sounds like you're tapping into a massive market demand within the fitness industry. Are you finding more and more people who are like, oh shit, this is stuff I need to, like all I ever thought about was my macros and my workouts. Like this is crazy.
Oh, dude, every single day. Because I mean, what I do on social media is like I'll pick a topic and then I talk about it, right? So it's like, again, like what is it? What are symptoms of it? Or what do I need to know about it? And then, kind of getting people to, again, like, okay, well, if you want more resources about this, check out these books or consider leaning into testing for this. Or, so just getting those wheels spinning because, again, like with whether it's hormones, whether it's thyroid, like everything is all interconnected. And so it's like if you have thyroid issues, you don't just have a thyroid issue. Like you probably have hormone imbalances. You probably have adrenal issues. You might have, insulin and blood glucose dysregulation issues. It's like everything is so interconnected. And so I just feel like education wins because when you empower people to truly understand, how to look at the bigger picture, like, again, there's a lot of people out there struggling thinking, oh, I need more motivation. I need more willpower. It's like, well, no, dude, like if you're dieting and your thyroid sucks, like it might be really, really hard to successfully lose weight. Or I think the conversation that I drive home a lot is just the idea of like, getting people to go the other route, because again, there's a lot of people that spend their whole time on planet Earth, trying to lose that last 5 pounds. And it's like, when was the last time you ate at maintenance calories, which is well over, 1,800, 2,000 calories for a majority of women? Like, when was the last time your body just felt safe and you weren't trying to work towards something, Because it's like, again, whatever you tend to fixate on is also what you tend to see more of. So like, if you're gonna buy a new car, well, guess what? You're gonna see that car, everywhere you're driving around town. Very similar with our bodies. If it's like, if you have a specific body concern, or it's, oh God, I really hate my midsection. Well, if every single day you also wake up, you walk in the bathroom, you lift up your shirt to, ab check yourself, or every single time you put on a piece of clothing, you're grabbing your stomach or complaining about it, it's like, that's going to manifest and you keep getting worse and worse because you're fixated on it. It's all you're going to see. So I think just like the nutrition industry, there's such an issue of, it's like we have more information available at our fingertips, but God, is so much of it also garbage. Medical medium is one that I love. Like, I'm not usually somebody to just like slam on people, but it's like, Homeboy literally in his books talks about he listens to spirits, and that's where half of this information is coming. Like,
who's this?
I believe, I forget his last name, but it's the dude that wrote Medical Medium. So there's like Medical Medium.
So medium as in psychic.
Yeah. So like, it's like, it's fucking spirits.
Awesome.
So when you're like, hey man, like I appreciate this, but like, can we go back to like research? And I think that's why I also appreciate people. Like, I know you guys love like Lane Norton, but it's like just trying to bring like the science and information to people, But it's like on Instagram, there's so much bullshit out there because it's like you can make money from it. So, people are going to spam poor ideas, or maybe it's they really latch onto an idea.
Oh, he's the celery juice guy?
Wow. Oh, as we pulled up. Heck yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Of course, he's the celery juice guy, too.
The spirits told him.
The spirits told. Which, again, like, I love doing, like, Q&As on Instagram, like, with the questions box, because same thing, it'll be like, how do you feel about celery juice? I mean, on a basic level, it probably tastes like shit, but it's like, are there maybe some benefits? Maybe. Like, are there more potent ways to move the fucking needle? Like, if you're going to make changes, go for cannonballs. Like, don't go for freaking bullets.
Do you know that this
celery is like the closest thing on earth that's to water.
Yeah.
And lettuce. Lettuce, celery, and water.
Iceberg lettuce.
Yeah, people, I feel amazing. I'm drinking 5 glasses of celery juice. How much water did you drink before that? Maybe half a glass. Okay. I think I know why you feel so. This formula right here that he's following is so predictable. If I didn't have, if I didn't have the integrity that it had, it would be very easy to make $1 million, and I could very easily pick something and just spin it and sell the fuck out of it and promise it to be.
But I mean, that's the hard part, right? Is like you're gonna see, like, I think both of our platforms do a really great job of just like trying to fight through the bullshit and just trying to, again, like help lead people the right direction. But unfortunately, like, the stuff that works is the stuff that's not sexy, and it's really fucking hard to sell.
And it takes longer. That's what it is.
It takes a long time. It's like anything else, man. You want to learn a martial art, you're gonna have to train for a couple of years. We don't have the thing that plugs in your head like on the Matrix, and you automatically download kung fu. It takes time, and if you want to get your body to normalize, consider how long you were not normalizing your body. It's probably going to take a while, and so it's going to require some patience, and that's okay. If your quality of life is so terrible that you can't wait, then that's okay too, because quality of life is extremely important. So,
but I think like one interesting point I would love to bring up, because this is like something I'm starting to see on my end, and I just want to put my head through the wall. Is like a lot of influencers and a lot of popular, like very, very large companies are starting to put out these hormone improving supplements, right? And so you're seeing supplements that contain ingredients like DIM, like calcium D-glucarate, like Vitex. And I don't want to say it's scary to me, but it's like people, when we're looking at the industry, right? It's like, we see marketing, it's like, hey, are you struggling with PMS, bad acne, irregular periods, and, bad gas and bloating? Cool. Well, like that probably just described like 99%
Everybody just
of people.
raise their hand, yeah.
So you put out a supplement that says, oh, hey, well, this thing is going to fix it. And everybody's like, fuck yeah. But it's like when you, like all 3 of those ingredients I list, DIM, calcium D-glucarate, and Vitex. So like, for example, like, if we take a supplement like DIM or calcium D-glucarate and we don't need it, Well, DIM can cause low estrogen levels. Like if we don't have proper liver detoxification, you can cause some gnarly damage by just taking a supplement that contains it. Very similarly, Vitex basically acts as jumper cables and helps promote the connection between the ovaries and your brain. And so same thing, it's like Vitex can have really great application. It can really help symptoms like PMS, lack of a menstrual cycle, various things. But if let's say somebody has PCOS or somebody has PCOS and they don't know it,
terrible.
They also probably don't know that Vitex is the worst thing they could have, because people with PCOS tend to already have elevated luteinizing hormone, which is what Vitex helps boost. So shit gets weird. And so like I cringe because there's 2 supplements that's like constantly people are sliding in my DMs being like, how do you feel about this balance supplement? How do you feel? And it's like,
here's why it annoys me, because like those products like Vitex, for example, things like it or it itself have been used for a long time in Chinese medicine, for example, Ayurvedic medicine. But here's the deal. You go see a Chinese medicine practitioner, they never just prescribe you, or at least they shouldn't, just prescribe you herbs. It's also a part of a protocol. And oftentimes those herbs are the short and the small part of it. So if like you're on this protocol and they'll say sleep, diet, stress, meditate, whatever, they'll say also we're going to use these supplements for this period of time to get you through the transition phase or whatever.
And they also probably did testing to confirm.
And that's the other point. Like you don't just take them and think it's going to fix it. It doesn't work that way, and oftentimes it makes things worse.
Yeah, so that's what kind of what I was getting at earlier, where it's like that weird balance of like, yes, it's good to be the CEO of your own health. And like, that's something I really try to empower clients and stuff like that. But at the same time, like understanding when things should be left in professional hands. And it's like, with clients, it's like, you can't just take these things because, your favorite influencer with code, Ashley 10 said, hey, take it. Yeah. Or because, your favorite company, you love, their protein powder, their greens powder, and they just came out with, this fancy new thing. And, I think I'll take that too. And it's like, oh, we also live in a very scary time, because it's kind of like the Dr. Oz, if he says, hey, buy the supplement, everybody's, fucking runs to the store. And it's like, oh, like it's so good because, again, we're starting to have conversations, information's getting out there, but it's like always, 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 forever and ever, amen, test and don't guess. But B, it's like, please just, ask your doctor, find a good doctor. Like you can spend all this money on shit you don't need and also make it worse. Whereas maybe, you might spend $400 or $500 on hormone testing, and that's fucking expensive. But it's like, it's an investment in yourself. And then you don't waste more money on shit that doesn't work for you, right? Because it's like, again, all these hormonal imbalanced symptoms can overlap so much. And then sometimes it also just comes back to like, they're super basic. So it's like, well, if you're suffering with like symptoms that might seem like thyroid issues, it's like let's say the symptom of like, I have really cold fingers. That could also be as simple as like, I have a B12 deficiency. I have an iron deficiency. I have a vitamin D deficiency. Yet you're over there like also, being like, Google says I've for sure got all these symptoms. I've probably got thyroid issues. And so it's just like, we've got to get
Or maybe
people,
it's cold.
Yeah, or maybe it's fucking cold. Maybe it's, again, blood glucose dysregulation. But it's like, getting people to get on the more preventative side, or if you're already deep in the shit, getting people to be like, okay, like let's invest, let's immediately try to, pull the brake on stuff, and let's actually get a full picture of what we're going on. But even with testing stuff gets so hard because doctors don't pull the right things. Like if we talk about thyroid, it's like, traditionally in the 90s, people just used to pull TSH levels. Well, TSH just tells you your messenger hormone. It's kind of the equivalent of if somebody walked up, they knocked on your door and they said, hey, I need you to do this thing. Like that's all it does. And so when you're looking at thyroid, you need to double check your doctor, because 9 times out of 10, your doctor isn't going to order all the tests we need to fully get like a heck yes or a heck no on a diagnosis. So you need TSH, you need free T3, you need free T4, you need antibodies, which is TPO and TGAB. I also usually, if people can do it, reverse T3 is really good as well. It's just expensive to order. But it's like, how many people go and they get testing and they say, oh, yeah, doctor said there's definitely no thyroid issues. And you look at it back and it's like, well, cool. Your doctor ordered TSH and total T4. Awesome. Rad. But same thing, with hormone testing, it's like, well, maybe if we're testing for testosterone, they pull free testosterone, but they don't pull total testosterone.
Right.
Or maybe, for
It's usually
women.
the other way around.
Yeah,
right?
usually, and I think Jolene Brighton does a really great job of hammering this home, but it's women will go get their hormones testing and they spend $300 or $400 and they try to do the thing and they pull their hormones on a Tuesday at 3 p.m. It's well, what day in your cycle were you? And they're like, I have no idea. And you're like,
that matters.
Cool. Well, there's 3 days you typically test. It's day 19 to 21 of your cycle so that you can capture a read on your progesterone levels. There's also some testing you can do depending on what you have going on. It might be day 3 of your cycle. But then we get back to two bigger issues is that A, people don't even know what day of their cycle they're on. People don't know if they ovulate, so there's an issue. But again, it's the doctor is willing to pull the lab work, but they don't have better instructions on how to do it. So it's just, again, all of this is how do you help people go out there? And if you're it's cool to step up to the plate and do testing, but let's make sure you're also testing the right things.
Excellent. So moving forward, what's in the future for you?
Ooh, so one of them I can't talk about because I've never seen somebody do this in the space.
Well, that's not fun.
I know. Maybe we'll start with the other things, and then if I leak it. So basically, once I get back, we're going to be launching my own podcast. So been doing tons of getting on other people's mics, and it's finally time. I'm in a position to scale, so we will be starting my own podcast. The next thing we're going to be doing is I haven't seen many people in this space promoting women to eat more food. And so personally right now, I've had stem cell injections in both of my shoulders, happened about 2 weeks ago. And so basically my doctor orders are hey, you can do lower body because you just need to let your shoulders, heal, no upper body. So currently I'm eating a caloric surplus. And so I kind of put out some feelers and I was like, man, it would be really cool to start some sort of support group and put out education for women on just hey,
how to bulk.
Yeah, and I think what I'm struggling with is all of the words, whether it's bulking, massing, lean bulking, it's all of those words don't sound super great. So I'd like to find some way, but just getting women to open the door. I think that the nutrition industry, at least we're getting away from people just living in a deficit and cutting their whole life. Now women are starting to understand, okay, there's this maintenance thing. I need to bounce back and forth between I'm either at maintenance or, I'm cutting. But getting people to recognize that third part of the transaction, which would be, eating a surplus, intentionally gaining muscle. Because I'm sick of women being hey man, I can't get bigger legs or, I want a juicier booty. How do I do it? It's well, you can't grow a muscle by fucking eating
800 calories.
Yeah,
That's probably the most common thing I used to get as a trainer is wanting to build your butt on 800 calories.
I'm eating 1,200 calories. Yeah. I'm doing hip thrusts. I don't understand why nothing's happening. Yeah. Fucking eat food.
Yeah.
I like that juicier booty.
Juicier booty.
Yeah. That's great.
But yeah, it's I would like to, at this point, it's I've written several very comprehensive ebooks that are very helpful. But it's I would like to kind of create a support group for people where it's hey, it's scary to be hey, I have abs and, for the next 3 months, I'm going to let go of them a little. Or it's just scary, when your clothes stop fitting as well or stuff like that. So I think creating some sort of support group and kind of safe space to just help women work through that and really support each other would be really cool. So it's something I've got on my radar. And I, fuck it, we'll talk about it. But the next thing I want to do is I really love getting out in front of people. I really love talking. I love connecting. Face to face with people, and social media is so great. I think that, podcasts and just, YouTube, whatever it is, all those are so great, but there's just something to be said for really connecting with people one-on-one. And so I wanted to get back kind of like I used to do where I traveled and just helped, teach nutrition certifications. But I've already done that, and that didn't really sound scary or I wanted to do something a little bit bigger beyond that. And so I had this idea where it was fuck, man, what if we started doing weekend retreats? And so we get together, they would have to be a little bit smaller groups. We'll say 12 to 15 people. But it's maybe in the morning from 8 to 12, we talk nutrition, we talk birth control, thyroid stuff, exercise stuff, how to help people maximize, whatever they're doing in the gym, or just, simply asking like, hey, you showed up to be here, like selfishly, what about nutrition or exercise or mindset or whatever, what do you want to take away from this weekend? So having, a short nutrition and some sort of, lecture each of the days of the retreat, but then working out together. It's like, again, we have this giant gym program full of hundreds of people. Let's give them a taste of what we do. Let's give them a taste of, you don't have to kill yourself in the gym to look good and feel good. But then let's go fucking send it. Like, I live in one of the greatest places on planet Earth. Like, Austin, Texas has so much to offer in terms of, you could rent a boat on Lake Travis. You could, go to the Greenbelt and go hiking and swimming. We could go sunset stand-up paddleboarding and watch the bats. And so I want to just kind of help people to connect, because I think it's so hard to find people that are on your same level and in the same headspace. And so getting people to just walk away from the weekend, really building connections with people, making friends and stuff like that. And so the third thing we're going to start basically doing is kind of this retreat idea, where we not only give you education and just really help give you the tools to move the needle forward wherever you're trying to go, but also have the freaking time of your life while also walking away with friends. And so kind of those are the big three, but definitely super excited about the next couple,
they
next
sound
6
great.
months.
Right on.
Yeah, they sound really great. Well, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you
Yeah,
for
it's been a lot of
having
fun,
me.
and we appreciate your support. You share our stories and stuff sometimes, so we really appreciate it. We think you're doing the right things. It's good to meet people doing the right things in the industry. So thanks for coming on.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Mind Pump. If your goal is to build and shape your body, dramatically improve your health and energy, and maximize your overall performance, check out our discounted RGB Super Bundle at mindpumpmedia.com. The RGB Super Bundle includes MAPS Anabolic, MAPS Performance, and MAPS Aesthetic. 9 months of phased expert exercise programming designed by Sal, Adam, and Justin to systematically transform the way your body looks, feels, and performs. With detailed workout blueprints and over 200 videos, the RGB Super Bundle is like having Sal, Adam, and Justin as your own personal trainers, but at a fraction of the price. The RGB Super Bundle has a full 30-day money-back guarantee, and you can get it now, plus other valuable free resources at mindpumpmedia.com. If you enjoy this show, please share the love by leaving us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes, and by introducing Mind Pump to your friends and family. We thank you for your support, and until next time, this is Mind Pump.